the quiet, golden hours of a late afternoon in Lincoln, Nebraska, the parking lot of Jerry's Roadside Diner became the unlikely stage for an extraordinary confrontation. The fading sun cast long, languid shadows across the cracked asphalt and the well-worn pavement, where locals and long-haul truckers alike would pause for a brief respite. The diner itself, a humble establishment with its neon sign flickering in the twilight, was a favorite meeting point, a place where the regulars sipped their coffee, exchanged friendly banter, and truck drivers, tired from long journeys, nibbled on hot meals before setting off again on the endless highways. Amid the gentle hum of conversation and the soft clink of dishes being handled by the busy staff, the atmosphere was one of contentment and routine, a world where every detail had its own quiet rhythm. Unbeknownst to the cheerful patrons inside, an unexpected drama was quietly unfolding outside. A man in his mid-40s, who moved with an air of unassuming dignity despite the challenges he faced, had just entered the parking lot. His name was Leon, dressed in a neatly pressed button-down shirt paired with faded jeans that hinted at both style and practicality. He navigated life with a grace that many admired. Seated in a sleek black wheelchair that spoke both of modern design and personal resilience, Leon's presence was striking. His dark skin and calm, unwavering gaze made him stand out effortlessly in this small town, not as someone who demanded attention, but simply as a man living his truth. On that day, like many others, Leon had come to Jerry's for a late lunch after a series of errands. A simple, unremarkable outing that would soon veer into the realm of the extraordinary. At first glance, nothing seemed amiss. The parking lot was filled with the everyday details of life. A few parked cars, the gentle murmur of voices drifting out from the diner, and the comforting routine of a place that had witnessed countless similar afternoons. Yet, as Leon began to roll steadily toward the diner's entrance, a small group of individuals lurked at the periphery of his journey. A cluster of 5 bikers, leaning nonchalantly against their polished motorcycles, observed him with a mixture of disdain and derision. Their boisterous laughter, rough-edged and intentionally pointed, sliced through the soft, ambient sounds. One of them, with a casual elbow jab to a friend, pointed in Leon's direction as though signaling that his very presence was an invitation for ridicule. The biker who had initiated the taunt, known among his comrades by the crude nickname Roland Thunder, shouted out in a tone that was less a greeting and more an insult delivered with deliberate cruelty. His voice, harsh and jarring, cut through the stillness like a poorly told joke. The others followed his lead, their laughter laced with malice and a sense of entitlement that left no room for decency. Yet Leon, steadfast in his resolve, did not divert his attention. He continued toward the door of the diner with a focused calm that belied the tension swirling around him. He had not come to provoke confrontation. He was merely there to have a meal and enjoy a moment of solitude. Yet fate, it seemed, had other plans. As Leon neared the diner's entrance, one of the bikers, a man wearing the defiant air of arrogance and an unmistakable smirk of entitlement, dismounted his motorcycle and strode directly toward him. The other bikers, in a loose semicircle formation, followed, with their heavy boots crunching on the gravel beneath them. Instinctively, Leon slowed his approach, his keen awareness of his surroundings alerting him to the gathering threat. He paused near the entrance, his hand hovering briefly over the rim of his wheelchair, as if seeking reassurance or, perhaps, a final moment of preparation before the storm. Stepping forward from among the group was the leader, a burly man adorned in a worn leather vest, emblazoned with the rebellious insignia, Outlaw Rebels. His grin, once self-assured, now twisted into a mask of unfriendly mockery as he addressed Leon. "Hey, buddy," the leader called out, his voice dripping with sarcastic amusement. "Where's the fire? Or are you just out for a stroll?" His words, laced with contempt, elicited raucous laughter from his companions. Despite the barrage of insults, Leon met the leader's gaze with an expression that was both calm and resolute. His voice, measured and even, replied simply, "I'm just grabbing some lunch." There was neither fear nor anger in his tone, only an unwavering determination to stay composed in the face of cruelty. However, Leon's composed response did little to appease the bikers. Instead, it seemed to stoke their desire to press on with their provocation. Another biker, younger and wiry with inked tattoos snaking up his arms, stepped forward and jeered, "What's the matter, man? Ain't gonna run us over, are ya?" He even mimicked the motion of wheeling, as though mocking Leon's mobility, which earned another round of cruel, hollow laughter from the group. Leon, maintaining his unflappable demeanor, chose not to reply. Instead, he adjusted his position, preparing to continue on his way to the diner, clearly uninterested in engaging with their childish antics. Yet fate was not done testing Leon's resolve. As he began to wheel past the group, one of the bikers deliberately stepped into his path, effectively blocking his way. The leader's earlier joviality faded into a colder, more menacing expression as he said, "Not so fast. We're just having a little fun here. No need to be rude for a moment." His tone, once playful, had shifted into something far more ominous. The air around them thickened, and a few curious patrons inside the diner glanced out through the windows, their eyes betraying a mix of concern and apprehension, though none dared to intervene. Leon's eyes flicked from the biker blocking his path to the others, who had by now formed a loose, intimidating semicircle around him. Despite the obvious threat, he maintained his calm and said plainly, "I don't want any trouble." His voice carried a quiet authority that caused a momentary pause among the assembled men, though it was clear from their tense posture that they were not yet willing to back down. Before any of the bikers could reply, Leon reached slowly into his pocket. His movements were deliberate, measured, a stark contrast to the hurried bravado of the group around him. The leader's smug expression wavered ever so slightly as he barked, "Who you callin', huh? Cops ain't gonna do much out here." Unperturbed, Leon calmly dialed a number on his phone, held it up to his ear for just a few measured seconds, and then ended the call. In that brief moment, an undercurrent of uncertainty rippled through the bikers, who exchanged uneasy glances at one another. They did not yet understand the significance of Leon's quiet action, nor did they anticipate the chain of events it would set in motion. Without uttering another word, Leon tucked his phone back into his pocket. The leader of the bikers squinted at him, trying in vain to decipher any hint of fear or defiance in his expression. "What was that about?" he sneered. "You think you're scaring us?" His voice betrayed a note of uncertainty that he would never admit openly. Leon, however, remained silent. Instead, he wheeled his chair a few feet to the side, positioning himself against the wall of the diner with a confidence that suggested he had all the time in the world. His calm composure only seemed to further frustrate the group. "What? You got something else coming?" one of the bikers joked nervously, his laughter forced and hollow. The others joined in with chuckles that sounded more like stifled groans than genuine mirth. Something about Leon's quiet, unyielding confidence was starting to erode the bravado they had worn so easily just moments before. As minutes passed, the bikers shifted restlessly, their earlier swagger beginning to crack. One of them muttered under his breath, "Man, I don't like this one," only to be silenced quickly by a cold, cutting glare from the leader. Then, as if on cue, a deep, low rumble began to resonate in the distance. At first it was so faint that it might have been mistaken for the distant hum of passing traffic, but gradually the sound grew louder, more insistent. A mechanical roar that cut through the uneasy quiet of the parking lot. Heads turned toward the main road, where a convoy of motorcycles was coming into view. Their chrome surfaces gleamed in the fading sunlight, and it soon became apparent that this was no ordinary group of riders. The convoy was massive. Dozens of bikers clad in black leather and protective helmets, their jackets adorned with patches symbolizing unity and protection. They moved as one, their collective presence exuding an air of authority that could not be ignored. Leon watched the approaching convoy with a measured, unreadable expression. He had not uttered another word since his phone call, yet now a faint smile played at the corners of his lips. The convoy pulled into the parking lot with precise coordination, lining up their bikes like a regiment of soldiers preparing for battle. The leader of the original gang of bikers, whose confidence had been so evident moments before, took a hesitant step back. His voice, now barely above a murmur, asked, "Who the hell are these guys?" Even as he questioned them, deep down he sensed that the power dynamic in the parking lot had shifted irrevocably. There was no going back from what was unfolding. Almost simultaneously, the convoy of riders dismounted their bikes with military precision. Their boots hit the gravel in unison, creating a steady, rhythmic sound that echoed throughout the lot. They moved with a singular purpose. No shouting, No extravagant gestures, just a quiet yet unmistakable display of authority. Each rider exuded a calm confidence, and their leather jackets bore a prominent patch reading, "Guardians of the Road." At the forefront of this formidable group was a tall, imposing man with a silver beard and piercing eyes. He stepped forward, surveying the scene with a careful, measured gaze that eventually landed on Leon. "Hey, you good, brother?" the silver-bearded guardian asked, his voice calm yet imbued with an unyielding firmness. Leon offered a slight nod in response, his expression composed and dignified as he replied, "I am now." The guardian's eyes then shifted to the bikers who had harassed Leon, and in that moment, the roles had reversed. The group that had once appeared invincible now looked like startled deer caught in the glare of an unforgiving light. The leader of the original bikers, attempting to salvage what remained of his crumbling bravado, puffed out his chest and demanded, "What's all this about?" His voice, however, lacked its previous strength, betraying his nervousness. Stepping closer, the guardian's imposing presence caused the biker to flinch visibly. "This," the guardian stated evenly, "is about respect." His tone carried the weight of someone who was not accustomed to repeating himself, a tone that made it abundantly clear that the message would be delivered just once. The other guardians fanned out slightly, forming a protective semicircle around Leon. In stark contrast, the original bikers exchanged uncertain looks, their previous confidence draining away with every passing second. One of them, a wiry young man with inked tattoos, murmured, "Man, we didn't mean anything by it. We were just messing around." Yet the guardian was having none of it. Folding his arms firmly across his chest, he replied, "Messing around? Harassing a man in a wheelchair isn't messing around. It's pure cowardice." The weight of his words fell heavily upon the assembled bikers, and for the first time that day they were left utterly speechless. The silence that followed was almost deafening, punctuated only by the quiet creak of the diner door as curious onlookers peered out to witness the unfolding drama. The leader of the original bikers, his earlier smirk now a distant memory, glanced desperately at his crew in search of backup, only to find their eyes averted and unwilling to meet his gaze. Meanwhile, the guardians stood resolutely, their silent presence far more intimidating than any verbal threat could ever be. Leon finally broke the silence. His voice, still calm, yet now cutting through the tension like a finely honed blade, said, "You thought I was alone, didn't you?" He paused deliberately, allowing his words to hang heavily in the cool evening air. "That's the thing about people like you," he continued, his tone measured and unwavering. "You only pick on those you think can't fight back." At this, the silver-bearded guardian's eyes glimmered with a flicker of pride as he regarded Leon. Turning his attention back to the bikers, he stated in no uncertain terms, "Now here's what's going to happen. You are going to apologize to this man properly, and then you are going to leave. And I want you to understand, you will not pull this kind of stunt again. Ever. Do I make myself clear?" The leader of the bikers, his voice faltering for a moment as he attempted to muster a retort, found himself unable to defy the resolute and unflinching stares of the guardians. After a moment of heavy silence, he hesitated and then muttered in a subdued tone, Yeah, okay, we're sorry." Leon raised an eyebrow at the meager apology, silently noting that it did not sound sincere. Sensing the need for greater emphasis, the guardian leaned in close, his voice dropping to a lower, more commanding register that made the biker's spine stiffen. "You'd better mean it," he said, his tone leaving no room for further debate. The apology was repeated, this time louder and clearer. "We're sorry." The leader's voice wavered as he glanced at Leon and then cast his eyes downward in reluctant submission. The others mumbled their own half-hearted apologies, their earlier bravado now completely dissipated. Leon accepted the apology with a single, measured nod, his eyes conveying that while forgiveness was granted, the lesson was not forgotten. "Remember," he warned quietly, "you don't get a second chance to fix this kind of mistake." As the bikers, their heads bowed in humiliation, scrambled back to their motorcycles, the guardians remained standing, their silent vigil a testament to solidarity and strength. They watched intently until the group of harassers sped off, their earlier arrogance replaced by the unmistakable air of shame. Gradually, the oppressive tension that had cloaked the parking lot began to lift, and Leon turned his attention to the silver-bearded guardian. Extending a hand with quiet gratitude, Leon said simply, "Thank you." The Guardian grasped Leon's hand firmly and replied with a warm assurance, "Any time, brother. You're not alone." As the convoy of Guardians prepared to mount their bikes once more, the rumble of their engines filled the air, not as a threat, but as a declaration of solidarity and collective strength. The sound, which had once invoked fear, now resonated with the promise that standing up against injustice would always be met with unity. The last of the Guardians revved their engines and rolled out of the parking lot, leaving behind an atmosphere that had transformed from one of intimidation to one of hope and quiet triumph. Inside the diner, the mood began to shift as well. What had been a subdued, routine day now buzzed with a new energy. Patrons who had earlier observed the scene from behind the safety of the windows resumed their conversations, their voices low and reflective as they processed the events they had witnessed. Leon, with measured steps, rolled toward the diner's entrance once again. He had faced adversity before, and today had been yet another reminder that standing firm in the face of hate and cruelty was the only choice worth making. Once inside, a friendly waitress, a middle-aged woman with short blonde hair and a kind smile, greeted him warmly. "Everything okay out there?" she asked softly, her eyes searching his face for any sign of distress. Leon returned her smile with a gentle nod and replied, "Yeah, everything's fine now. It was just a little misunderstanding." She raised an eyebrow, silently questioning his words, but chose not to press further. "Good to hear," she said, moving quickly to take his order. "The usual, please." Leon responded in his characteristically calm tone, settling into his favorite booth as he prepared to reflect on the events of the day. As he sipped his coffee, feeling the warmth spread through him, Leon's thoughts turned inward. The brief encounter had been unnerving. Those bikers had believed that his disability made him an easy target, that they could take advantage of him without consequence. Yet they had not counted on one crucial fact. Leon was not alone. He was part of a larger community, one that stood together in the face of injustice and would not hesitate to defend one of their own when needed most. The silver-bearded Guardian's intervention had reinforced an essential lesson that went far beyond apologies and confrontations. It was a lesson about unity, respect, and the intrinsic power of standing up for what is right. Leon had demonstrated that true strength does not merely reside in physical prowess or the ability to endure pain. It lies in one's capacity to remain true to oneself, even when faced with overwhelming odds. In that moment, his calm determination had become an inspiration for everyone watching, a clear message that no one should ever be underestimated, regardless of their background or circumstances. For the Guardians, the mission was clear. It wasn't simply about righting a wrong in a parking lot on a quiet afternoon. It was about sending a broader message, one that declared that hate and cruelty would never triumph over the unbreakable bonds of community and solidarity. Their silent, powerful presence had reminded all who witnessed the confrontation that even the most unassuming individuals could be part of something far greater, a collective force that valued kindness, respect, and the dignity of every human being. Leon's reflection that day was not one of triumph over physical adversity, but rather of an inner victory. He had not fought with fists or raised his voice in anger. Instead, he had stood firm with a quiet confidence that resonated with every person who had been forced to confront their own biases. As the memory of the confrontation slowly receded into the background of that eventful afternoon, the hum of motorcycles in the distance now carried a note of hope, a promise that no act of intolerance would ever go unanswered. In the days and weeks that followed, the story of that afternoon spread quietly through Lincoln, Nebraska. People recounted the moment when a simple phone call turned the tables, when a man in a wheelchair demonstrated that courage and dignity could overcome even the most brazen forms of harassment. The tale became a reminder that strength comes not from physical might, but from an unwavering commitment to one's principles. It served as an inspiration for those who had ever felt vulnerable or marginalized, reinforcing the belief that kindness and respect always outweigh fear and cruelty. Leon's experience at Jerry's Roadside Diner was in the end more than just an isolated incident. It was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Every glance exchanged between him and the Guardians, every word spoken in measured tones, built a narrative of solidarity that would linger long after the last engine had quieted. It was a narrative that affirmed the power of community, of standing together even in the face of those who sought to diminish the value of another human being. And in that affirmation there was hope, a hope that resonated in the hearts of all who believed that justice and compassion could prevail over prejudice and hostility. In the soft, reflective moments that followed that unforgettable afternoon, as Leon sat quietly in his booth and savored the last sips of his coffee, he realized that what had transpired was more than a mere scuffle in a small-town parking lot. It was a living, breathing demonstration of the profound truth that when people come together with courage and empathy, they have the power to reshape the world around them. Leon's steadfast refusal to be intimidated, his quiet insistence on treating others with dignity, and the unyielding solidarity shown by the Guardians would forever remain a beacon of light in a world too often overshadowed by cruelty. That day, the shadows cast by the setting sun seemed to recede in the face of the inner light that Leon carried. And as the patrons inside Jerry's resumed their quiet conversations, the spirit of unity and respect lingered, a reminder that every individual, no matter how unassuming, had the capacity to inspire change. For Leon, for the Guardians, and for everyone who had witnessed the confrontation, the lesson was unmistakable. Standing up against injustice is not an act of defiance, but a testament to the unyielding strength of the human spirit. As the night slowly embraced Lincoln, the story of that afternoon grew into a legend of a man who had refused to be defined by his disability, and of a community that had come together to reaffirm the timeless values of dignity and respect. And though the bikers had long since ridden away, their departure marked not the end, but the beginning of a renewed understanding among all who called that small town home. It was an understanding that kindness, solidarity, and unwavering courage would always triumph over fear and cruelty, and that every act of respect, no matter how small, could ripple outward to create a better, more compassionate world. In the end, the tale of Leon and the Guardians of the Road is a reminder to us all: no one should ever be underestimated. Even in the face of prejudice, the quiet strength of an individual, bolstered by the support of a caring community, can create ripples of change that resonate far beyond a single afternoon in a Lincoln parking lot. It is a lesson written in the language of resilience, a testament to the truth that real power is found not in physical strength alone, but in the steadfast courage to remain true to oneself, regardless of the challenges one might face. This was the day when a simple act, a quiet phone call, transformed a moment of potential conflict into a powerful demonstration of unity and respect. It was a day when the old adage that strength comes in numbers was proven not through noise or aggression, but through a calm and deliberate stand against injustice. And as the memory of that day settled gently into the hearts of all who witnessed it, it served as an enduring reminder that no matter how dark the shadows may grow, the light of compassion and solidarity will always find a way to shine through. Thus, in the gentle aftermath of that fateful afternoon, as the night deepened and the stars emerged above Lincoln, Nebraska, the world seemed just a little bit brighter. The parking lot of Jerry's Roadside Diner, with its fading sunlight and lingering echoes of a long-ago confrontation, had become a silent monument to the power of dignity, courage, and the unbreakable bond of community. And so, as Leon continued on his way, underdone, unbowed, and forever true to himself, he carried with him the knowledge that in a world too often divided by fear and prejudice, one simple act of standing up for what is right could light the way for many others. In that quiet, unassuming parking lot, where shadows and light danced together in the fading glow of the late afternoon, a story of quiet heroism was written. A story that would live on in the hearts and minds of those who believed that every person, regardless of circumstance, deserved to be treated with respect and kindness. And it is a story that reminds us all, in the struggle for justice and compassion, no one is ever truly alone. Leon's experience at Jerry's Roadside Diner was, in the end, more than just an isolated incident. It was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Every glance exchanged between him and the Guardians, every word spoken in measured tones, built a narrative of solidarity that would linger long after the last engine had quieted. It was a narrative that affirmed the power of community, of standing together even in the face of those who sought to diminish the value of another human being. And in that affirmation there was hope. A hope that resonated in the hearts of all who believed that justice and compassion could prevail over prejudice and hostility. In the soft, reflective moments that followed that unforgettable afternoon, as Leon sat quietly in his booth and savored the last sips of his coffee, he realized that what had transpired was more than a mere scuffle in a small-town parking lot. It was a living, breathing demonstration of the profound truth that when people come together with courage and empathy, they have the power to reshape the world around them. Leon's steadfast refusal to be intimidated, his quiet insistence on treating others with dignity, and the unyielding solidarity shown by the Guardians would forever remain a beacon of light in a world too often overshadowed by cruelty. That day, the shadows cast by the setting sun seemed to recede in the face of the inner light that Leon carried, and as the patrons inside Jerry's resumed their quiet conversations, the spirit of unity and respect lingered. A reminder that every individual, no matter how unassuming, had the capacity to inspire change. For Leon, for the Guardians, and for everyone who had witnessed the confrontation, the lesson was unmistakable. Standing up against injustice is not an act of defiance, but a testament to the unyielding strength of the human spirit.